Good morning. It is 7:58 a.m. on Monday, June 1st, 2020. I'm Christiana Ellis, and I'm all over the place this morning. This is 5 more minutes. So, when I first was brought out of sleep by a Rocket barking that he needed to go outside, um, I was feeling really bad. I mean, not like, well, so I had a migraine last night, which I get sometimes. This one was worse than usual, but again, like, I still should always hasten to add, just because a lot of people deal with migraines, so I feel like it's important to qualify that like the way some people describe migraines, like even my worst ones don't seem as bad as the way some people describe the migraines they get. So I guess just take that into account. But I didn't feel good. And so I went to bed relatively early. And then when it was time to get up this morning, I was just like, it was clear my body wanted more sleep, felt very low energy. I briefly considered, like, am I getting sick? What's going on there? My throat was dry, probably from just snoring. But I took my temperature to make sure I didn't have a fever or anything. That's all fine. And I was just feeling extremely low. I was starting to look into, like, well, how, do I feel bad enough that maybe I want to consider that, even though I'm working from home, like, do I want to say, no, today is a sick day? I was considering that, and, just, or at the very least saying, like, well, do I have any meetings scheduled for the morning? Maybe I need to go back to sleep. Or at the very least, if I'm going to get up, I'm going to need some caffeine. And then, through some sort of magical thought transformation that I honestly now don't remember all of the steps or all the links in the chain, I ended up, before having any caffeine, spending half an hour doing all my dishes and collecting the trash and recyclables and basically just tidying up the whole kitchen area. Where did that energy come from? I don't know. So it is what it is. I think probably part of what's going on is just stress from, everything that's happening in the world right now. I guess I'll also add that although certainly there were violent protests in Boston last night, I'll just clarify for anyone who's unclear on Boston geography. I'm way out in Watertown. It's all that stuff's pretty far from where I am. So as far as I can tell, there wasn't anything near me. So there's, like, no one has to, like, worry on that account. Some of it's not too far from where I work if I were to be going into the office. But again, still not that close either. It's just closer by comparison. Obviously, the protests and riots going on right now are heartbreaking. And again, I want to be clear, because sometimes these things can lack nuance. I want to be clear that, like, by and large, without wanting to defend every single person, who might be out there for a variety of different reasons, by and large, I'm on the side of the protesters for sure. Now, again, I'll clarify that that doesn't mean I'm defending every single action that any protester is taking, because again, there are people out there for all sorts of reasons. And so while there are lots and lots, and I'd say by far the majority of them are legitimate protesters who I very much defend, even sometimes when it comes to things like property damage. But I guess the point being that I feel like frequently it seems like it's the police that escalate things, and that police brutality is what these are all about in the first place. And it's really kind of hard to see. And the fact that it's all going on during this pandemic just makes it all the scarier because, how much additional spread might we see from some of these sorts of things, and especially when the black communities tend to have, like in so far in the pandemic, they've been harder hit in the pandemic anyway. And so now there's overlap between that and the people out there protesting. It just, makes my heart hurt. Um, as far as what I can do from my privileged position, I'm trying to, be open and listen to the voices of the protesters and what they say they want. I'm trying to not put a burden on them. I've contributed to some bail organizations, but I'm not going to pretend that I'm any kind of a expert on this, or that anyone like I'm not trying to be a voice that anyone should like listen to and do what I say, sort of thing. But I looked, and I looked for ways to help, and that's the thing that seems consistent, is requests to help support some of those bail organizations so that people who get arrested as part of these, these sweeps can get out of jail. And I had so many other things that I felt like I could have talked about, video games and TV and movies, all the ordinary sorts of things that I might talk about, and just none of those feel important right now. Um, but you also have got to take care of yourself out there, everyone. And, I'll add too, though, sometimes taking care of yourself means, you know, refusing to take what society says that it owes you, and demanding what you deserve. And so I think that some of these protests and riots, do I wish they weren't necessary? Yeah, obviously. But the thing is, nothing changes without them. You could argue that a lot of damage gets done, people get hurt. Yeah, okay, but those things are also happening without the protests, right? That's why the protests are happening, is because that stuff keeps happening and doesn't change. And part of what's happening too is that, as much as okay, this one cop is going to get charged, well, first of all, we don't even know that he's going to be found guilty. And frankly, the problem ultimately in a lot of these cases is that the law gives police permission to do horrible things. And that is the problem, ultimately, is that there is systemic abuses that are specifically and explicitly allowed in the laws that are written that say what police can do. And so frequently when these abusive cops are charged, when they are charged, rarely, they frequently are found not guilty because, again, the court can only find people guilty based on what the law says. So the law is the problem, and that's why we also need to be pushing for political change. And there are lots of people out there with actual specific policy proposals, so, it's not a pie in the sky thing. It is, people have ideas. So, I don't know. Again, I don't want to claim to have any sort of authority on any of this. I'm just going by what I see out there, like everybody else. And so one of the things that I'll also maybe just finish with is be very careful right now that there's a lot of misinformation spreading, right? Lots of times you'll see a real video, but maybe you don't realize, oh, that video is actually from 2004 in another country. Or, it'll be a video where it says, oh, look, hey, police are trying to harass this FBI agent, and isn't it funny when he makes them go away? But, actually, he's not an FBI agent, and it was just, when they look at his ID, it's not that it was some FBI ID, it was just that he was not the guy they were looking for. And so, context matters with some of these things. And that's not to say that videos of stuff happening are, should be ignored, but just, always approach some of these things with a bit of a skeptical eye. Look for context and sources, because there is a lot of misinformation out there, and people cherry pick their what they're putting out there, and they sometimes misattribute. Is that the right way to say that? Anyway, God, take care of yourselves, people, and if there's someone near you who needs your help, take care of them too. I'll talk to you tomorrow for 5 more minutes.